This is a film directed by Clint Eastwood telling the story of a political maneuver from the then newly appointed President of South Africa, Nelson Mandela. Starring Morgan Freeman and Matt Damon, the South African rugby team it centres around is more than just a sports team, but a symbol of the racial divide within the country. Mandela understands the importance of this and, through his inspiring leadership, sets out to use this team to begin building bridges of trust throughout the nation's people. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Mate Night, the hottest up-and-coming location for movie reviews, interesting stories, and provocative questions. This is episode 28, Invictus. You are hosted by myself, Jambo, and the superfluous, the gratuitous, and the disorientated upside-down teaspoon, it's Fred.
Superfluous, meaning...
Not totally necessary, I think.
Surplus requirements.
Yeah, but it sounded really good.
It did.
It sounds like
I reckon sneak that one in a few rungs down there. Maybe don't do... The first adjective you do is, we don't need him here.
Yeah, and also pause on it.
And also the man who is not necessary.
All right, well, now, as everybody obviously knows at this point, here at Mate Night, we're on a mission to become film critics. With that in mind, we thought we'd begin by ranking every film ever made. So, today, we will be answering 3 questions. What is the film? Why is it important? And most importantly, what score does the patented Mate Night machine give this flick?
The Mate Night machine.
Oh, the Mate Night machine. Unstoppable, baby. Let's kick things off with a gut reaction score each. This is a truly subjective score of enjoyment, which will be used within the formula to help determine the final ranking at the end of the episode. Fred, are you ready?
Freddie is ready.
Okay, so on the count of 3, I think that you went first last, correct, Amundo?
Yeah.
So, count me in whenever you are ready.
3, 2, 1.
7.8.
7.0.
Okay, so for those who are interested, we have already recorded an episode of this, but due to certain technical difficulties that I won't go into, we are just going to re-record this one and just go over kind of what we felt about the film, what we think made it good, what we think held it back.
It's spoiler-free, mainly discussion at the start, and maybe we'll go into a bit.
We're going to be spoiler-free.
Completely.
We will be spoiler-free. We can't say spoiler-free mainly because that's not very useful.
Sorry. At the start, we will be spoiler-free.
We'll tell you when spoilers are coming in.
We may have some spoilers later.
Morgan Freeman. Okay, this was really the biggest center of the sort of discussion for a good chunk of last time. So Morgan Freeman stars. He plays Nelson Mandela. Now, Mandela has been on record as saying that Morgan Freeman is the only person he would ever want playing him. Now, I believe that Idris Elba did do
That's right.
Mandela, and you've watched both now, correct?
And I don't think Mandela was dead at that point.
Okay, so that is interesting.
Yeah.
So I remember you saying last time that you certainly held a bit more appreciation for Elba, but could you just kind of walk us through how you felt about Morgan Freeman in this
I
role?
had one gripe, which I upon reflection, I don't feel as strongly about as I did. That gripe was Morgan Freeman is so recognisable as Morgan Freeman, and he's playing Nelson Mandela, who in and of himself is an iconic figure. And so I felt it marginally detracted from what was supposed to be Nelson Mandela. Some biopics that I've enjoyed in the past have had smaller actors go up and portray those characters. Having said that, you have had very successful ones. I mentioned on our first attempt at recording this, Gary Oldman as Winston Churchill, which obviously Gary Oldman's a massive actor, but he's not quite Morgan Freeman, who is just a titan in terms of recognizability. Yeah. So it became quite hard for me to dissociate, which wasn't as much of an issue for you.
Definitely not, yeah. There were moments, certainly, when they put Morgan Freeman in original footage that bothered me a bit, and that kind of really then it jarred me at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I absolutely get what you mean. But I was able to let go of it within a certain period of time.
And one of the things I liked most about this film was the portrayal of Nelson Mandela.
Top 10 character? It's just...
in terms of, I don't know, are you saying top 10 character, cinematic?
Okay, mate, I don't know if I'd be prepared to make such a huge statement on it. Okay. But I mean, one of my favourite characters.
Yeah, and obviously it is a portrayal. I was like separating that entirely when we first spoke and saying that's all Mandela and no Freeman, which is so unfair. You mentioned when we originally spoke that you felt like Freeman brought a real playfulness to the character, which is is very true.
He brings a certain gentle charisma that is, I think, I would certainly find incredibly difficult to do. If someone said play Mandela, Jumbo, obviously there are certain difficulties I would face quite quickly, but the way that he can command a room whilst also being so gentle is just absolutely beautiful to watch.
For sure. And to be honest, like, the gripe I have is diminishing in my mind when I think of it and how you put it. You're right. He brings a real gentle yet powerful and respectable demeanor to the character. Minor things then is it's Morgan Freeman. And I still can't get beyond that. And maybe my ideal version of someone portraying Nelson Mandela is like an unknown to me.
Yeah. Or Morgan Freeman, but it's his
Morgan
first
Freeman,
role.
but it's not actually Morgan
Freeman. This undiscovered person.
Yeah, it's Freegan Mormon. I didn't have as much of an issue with that. Last time I kept trying to say, what was it? Nelson Friedella.
Or something.
Nelson Friedella.
Nelson Bourbon.
Nelson Friedella. So, yes, Nelson Friedella as an entity is a was a tiny bit jarring, but his embodiment of the man that is Mandela is clearly why I enjoyed the film.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I
beautiful
can't
on the
complain.
page, beautifully portrayed.
Yeah.
And just unfortunately, and I'm sure you're not going to be the only one, you do know it's Morgan Freeman for a lot of it. Like, and some people will feel that more than others. I was able to sort of immerse myself eventually. But that is by no means, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are not saying that this is a problem with Mandela's performance.
Morgan Freeman's performance.
Oh, well, that's how fucking good it was.
I think that also was something that undermined my argument last time we recorded this, was I kept trying to say it. And I kept calling Morgan Freeman Mandela and Mandela Morgan Freeman.
That's how good he was.
Yeah. And so my point originally was around Matt Damon. I preferred him.
So what did we like about Matt Damon?
So his accent is better.
And for the
definitively better.
I've got a South African neighbour whom I asked, what did you think of the film? I didn't prompt him. And the only initial comment that he made was, I was really impressed by the accents.
Damon does a really good South African accent. Freeman, you can hear it going a bit. Now, Freeman gets to do a Mandela impression, so that can help. But even so, you can hear the American slipping in a few times.
Damon's just, I mean, what a guy.
Oh, we had one of our half segments last time was about him being Hollywood's nicest person in the world.
Look, here's the thing with Damon, right? He is not the nicest person. He just seems to be the most real person to me. He's
most likable?
Yeah, like I like him more than people who you would say is the nicest person in Hollywood, because it's not like he's trying to be this golden angel. He is just so likable and just so normal. Like,
I just want to be his friend.
Yeah. You see him in films, and you think he does an amazing job of them. He's an Oscar winner, but then you also see him in interviews, and he's just so incredibly humble and articulate, and eloquent. And he shot to popularity at a very young age, and it's not like it's turned him into this megastar idiot. He is just a real human being.
Yeah.
But much better than most of them.
But better than all of us. He is like one of the best people in the world.
Good Will Hunting is one of my favourite films. And in no small part because of him in the way that he plays that role.
He said something, I mean, every interview I watch with him just makes me like him more, because he does stuff and says stuff. His character is just so admirable.
What a guy.
A really, really lovely fella. And you know what? The loveliest, I think. I'm starting to become a real big fan of Ryan Gosling, which I always was. But I'm starting to just love that guy.
Yeah.
But he's much more bad boy. You know, Matt Damon is the he's the marry in the shag, marry, kill.
Yeah, and sure. That's it. And I think there are more certainly Ryan Gosling will be more divisive. Like, I feel like surely
not everyone loves. Not
yeah,
everyone.
That's
can,
it. Whereas
can
I feel
Ryan
like
Gosling,
there's nobody who knows Matt Damon's character, his person, either in interviews or whatever, who doesn't like him.
Yeah, there can't be.
There can't be.
There can't
They
be
just
someone.
can't. Like, it just
If
has never
there
done
is,
anything wrong. And
why?
like I say, I want to stress this. It's not like he's desperately trying to prove himself to be this super nice guy. That's partly what I like about him.
No.
Like, you just can't not like him. He's just...
It's just makes you feel all safe, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Makes you feel safe.
Should we change our name to Matt Knight? Just talk about him all the time.
Yeah, Matt Knight.
All right, welcome back to Matt Knight, where we talk about Matt Damon.
Right, Matt Damon's good.
Okay, sorry, Invictus.
What are we talking about? We're talking about a film. All right, so when we spoke about this before, I retain my enjoyment. 7.0.
Yes.
A fine film, a very fine film. And what I liked most was the depiction of Mandela. It made me really interested in him as a character.
Agreed.
His actions and the moves that he made in order to sew up together South Africa.
Very shrewd, political, but also from a place of compassion.
Yeah, it was interesting. Whenever you see people navigate the political space, they leave their imprints, and his was so nurturing.
Yes.
It's just lovely to watch. Loved Damon as well. I thought his accent was great and
Beefy.
Oh yeah, great.
Beefed up for it.
Yeah.
What a guy.
Great shoulders. You know
Staring him back over there.
Quality shoulders.
Sorry, continue.
Welcome to Matt Night, where we're talking about Damon's shoulders. Now, we didn't love everything. The World Cup itself felt underutilized. Not in the sense of they mentioned it all the fucking time.
Yes.
But the actual sporting moments.
Yes.
You're talking about one of the most exciting, dynamic, sporting events in the world, and the conflict that they could have represented there felt a bit like a wet squib.
Yeah, and I think I know what's happened here is they've figured it out. They basically had to make a choice between really making the conflict, the narrative, follow the rugby, the sport, or follow Mandela and his dangers. And the thing is, yes, it probably would have been a more interesting and entertaining film if they'd have gone down the route of the Rugby World Cup, because for those who haven't watched it, they really don't do anything. Like, it's such a good opportunity, is what Fred's saying, is there's so much opportunity for this amazing narrative around the route to success within the realms of the sport itself, and they just don't use it. But they do have narrative and conflict in there, but it's much more centered around the threat to Mandela's life and the threat to his political power and things like that, which I think does make a less enjoyable story to follow, but I certainly can see why they've done it.
Yeah, and you mentioned something really interesting about the conflict, which I don't think we'd spoken about before, but it does actually feel like they've tried to have their cake and eat it too.
I don't fully understand that phrase.
So in this case, right, they've got the Rugby World Cup. They've got Mandela's story, which in and of itself is supposed to be interesting enough. But they've tried to use the Rugby World Cup element of his life.
Yes.
And what they're doing, instead of making it all about Mandela with just the Rugby World Cup as a side piece, or all about the Rugby World Cup with Mandela's influence input, they've kind of tried to do both at the same time, and it's diminished the returns of both.
I understand.
So they've basically been like, we want this and we want this, and it's both going to work rather than having any give and take.
I think I would also go as far as to say I agree with that assessment. I do think that the Mandela story could have had much more to it. And one of the things specifically as well is, you did actually answer this for me a little bit, but I still couldn't get away from it emotionally, was the whole, I guess the meeting point really between the two, where with Mandela trying to use his political power to achieve his truly compassionate aims, with his tools being the rugby. The narrative there didn't really make a lot of sense to me. His plan, it was just like, oh, I'm just going to like inspire this underdog team to just win. That's my plan. And it was like, well, if they'd have gone down a Mandela story route, or they'd have gone down a rugby route, maybe there could have been some kind of actual material narrative that made sense there. Now, it felt good emotionally, but actually I was sat there for a lot of the film going like, what is he actually doing to like change the outcome here? Like, apart from just say like, I'm really behind you guys.
Yeah, I think the only thing that is identifiable is the relationship with Pinar and how he tries to influence Pinar's leadership.
Yeah.
And that's about as much. And to be honest, they suggest Mandela had more of an influence on the outcome of the rugby by proxy in this than he did in real life.
And they had to, because what influence could he have had? And I think that it represents the exact point you're making, which is like, they didn't really end up with a great rugby narrative, and they didn't really end up with a really great Mandela narrative. They kind of just ended up with a sort of halfway between.
And to extend that even more, we're talking about an incredibly tense and complex political situation post-apartheid.
Yep.
So the landscape within South Africa, within apartheid, and then the dynamic racial events that were happening leading up to the desegregation and Mandela becoming blacks having the right to vote, Mandela becoming the president, and then the aftermath of that and how they worked to the Rainbow Nation ideal is basically condensed a very politically a very charged piece of history for let's say 30 years worth, beyond that and after that, but let's say we're talking a 30-year period which they breeze over. They try and make a whole microcosm of this cause and resolution, the Rugby World Cup, which is very Hollywood. It's a very Hollywood decision. Completely agree. If you look, there's no issue with Hollywood doing something like that. That's kind of what they're there for. And you can't make
it's a story,
a 2-hour film that encapsulates 30 years of history like that. The only thing you would say is if they're going to focus on one thing particularly, it felt like they really did just go for kind of two areas rather than one.
I think it would have scored better with the enjoyment if it had just tried to do one or the other. But I can see what they've tried to do. I just don't know if it's, completely worked in that way.
So I think we're talking about something that's supposed to be quite deep in meaning and theme. And it doesn't quite hit the mark enough for it to be a standout film. So
we've said a few different remarks, and the one last thing that I really want to touch on, which you got very close to there, was the themes. Now, one of the most standout things about this film was the character Mandela and its portrayal, but certainly for me at least, I felt like presumably because it was a representation of Mandela, the thematic messaging within this film felt nuanced and sophisticated and compassionate and smart in a way that I don't think Hollywood does very well these days. Right. And I really enjoyed the thematic elements of this movie, which is not actually very normal for me. And I think that it is probably because the person who was leading this felt genuinely, truly compassionate about the people in the world around him. And it was so nice to see such a pure soul, and not such a pure soul, but such a clear understanding of the need for good in the world, that even though it would be just to take revenge, he just knows that we need to press on and get closer to net good as soon as we can. And that just felt genuinely refreshing for me thematically. And I really appreciated that about this film.
Yeah. And they did well to emphasize how his temperament has been formed through years of confinement.
Terrible stuff happening to him.
Yeah, and go full sail to now he's almost a step above everyone in terms of he's just more enlightened.
Exactly.
Because he's gone through so much.
Yeah.
Such an unjust decision. Yes. I don't know as much about his terrorist past. I know he was involved in plots that were overthrown, but
it's unlikely he deserved the situation that he was in.
For certain. And it got to a point where it was quite clear that in being confined for 27 years...
You'd have a chip on your shoulder. Everyone would.
And he was Madiba.
And I tell you what as well, one of the things that he claims got him through that made one of the most profound moments of the movie, which was when it read the poem. Now, I think that could have gone terribly for me. I feel like that is the exact sort of scene that I could watch and be like, oh, this is really cringy and they've done a terrible job of this. Especially a film that is so blatantly Hollywood, where they've just rugbyfied a story to make it more palatable.
Right.
And I think that poem really landed. It helped that it was a beautiful poem, but just the presentation of it was outstanding.
That's interesting. I actually am more in the camp that you describe. If I felt they actually did less with what they had. I think that poem is phenomenal.
It probably was partly just the poem.
The poem's so good that you're like, it's almost impossible for your reading of it not to be amazing. And I was kind of like, so that... okay, we won't ruin what happens, but they read the poem at one point in the film, and I was a bit more in the camp of I think there would have been a better way of doing this. That poem, though, is so quality.
What's the story? You've given me the story, but what was it?
So,
sorry, the story behind the poem, how it came to life.
The author, William Ernest Henley, is... He wrote it as a section of some of his written works, which I think included other poems as well as maybe just some writings. And it was on the back of him having a leg amputation due to tuberculosis complications of tuberculosis.
That's a bad compilation, that.
At the time when he wrote it as well, so he had his leg amputated, and he also was staring down the barrel of having another amputation, which didn't happen.
Okay.
And his poem was on the back of "My spirit is indomitable."
It's a very stoic sort of message.
The story obviously it adds so much weight to the poem itself, but the poem is quality. And the fact that Mandela found it and it became so inspirational to him within his confinement.
The real Mandela.
They didn't just add this as a poem for the film. This was a massive inspiration to Mandela. Like, I just think that the actual... I've always loved the first time I saw that poem, that the end where... I just read the last line, or the last part. So he goes through a whole section of him just building himself up with rhyme, and then, "It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." Like, that makes me shiver. Me too. That last line, the encapsulation of just such a powerful moment in that little that rhyming couplet at the end. So yeah, awesome poem. The guy himself obviously wrote it in a time as similarly as dark to what Mandela went through, having leg amputation, almost a double leg amputation. Funnily enough, he was actually friends with Robert Louis Stevenson, who was the author of Treasure Island.
Yeah, okay.
That came out around that time.
That was a Nobel Prize winner, wasn't it?
19th century. Well, I don't know. It might have been Nobel Prize for Literature. It's a great book. In the book, there is a character, Long John Silver.
Yes.
A one-legged pirate.
Right.
Who's the influence of...
There you
William
go,
Ernest
man.
Henley, which is a very, very cool bit of trivia for you there.
That is a cool... legitimately, that is fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's
That's
cool,
such
isn't
a
it?
cool little, like, tip the hat to the mate.
Yeah,
and obviously, I don't know much about this guy. I know one of his poems, but based on what he wrote, probably a pretty nice guy.
Yeah, it must have been nice guy.
It's so... the admiration that you just have to have for the people who have that much control over their emotion, their reactions to what is, like, blatant injustice in any situation, be it Mandela's or the original authors or any of the people. You hear stories about people from the Holocaust who had similar attitudes of, like, you can do whatever you want, but you can't make me feel you can't make me, I am still in charge of the way that I react and the way that I feel. It's just, you just can't help but respect it. And then to put it so beautifully, and then to have Morgan Freeman read it to me.
Oh yeah. And
come on.
And he's remembered it. I've seen interviews with him after he has memorized the poem. It's very cool.
Ever the professional. Here's a fun little fact which Fred thought was funny. Morgan Freeman learned to write with his right hand to better represent Mandela.
Completely unnecessary. Right with my right hand. No way.
But let me put it to you this way. Yes, I agree. It seems superfluous, but it does represent his willingness to just completely commit to the craft and just say, I'm just going to do anything and everything to just better represent this person. It's not like he's just learned his lines and turned up on the day. Like, he's taking it seriously. It's probably not the only thing he's done.
Yeah, for sure. It's just
a bit ridiculous.
The most useless thing.
Nobody knows what...
I'm sure he did other stuff, and it's a shame he told anyone about that one, because it was pointless. Because I hope he did other stuff, because if all he did in preparation was learn to write with his wrong hand...
He did not do it for that film. He's always wanted to.
Just to round off then, because I know we went on kind of tangents, which were really interesting things to talk about, obviously. The story itself is interesting. In my opinion, bit off a bit more than it can chew unnecessarily. Mm-hmm. Great performances from the two leads. Yeah. And the subject matter is such that you can't help but want to learn more about that period of history. However, the messaging itself felt like it missed the mark somewhat because of the setting, somewhat because it's condensing a very charged period of history. And finally, the actual rugby, things like the rugby and the soundtrack, which we won't go into.
Well, yeah, if you're on the long form, you'll hear us when we're working through the May Night Machine. There's a couple moments in the soundtrack that are
one of the few
unacceptable,
noticeably bad sounds. Music for film done poorly is quite rare. Yeah. And this is one of those examples.
This is one I won't be forgetting, that's for sure. There was a very specific song they chose that I was just like, that is atrocious. It is aged absolutely terribly. For those who have watched the film and are curious what I'm talking about, it's the scene where Mandela gets out of the helicopter to go and basically tell all the rugby team that he knows all their names, and he gets a hat in exchange. During that scene, there is a song that is played which is just atrocious. It's an insult to have to listen to it, and neither of us could quite believe what we were listening to when it happened. So, but there you go. Like, these things happen. On the whole, 7.8, 7.0, right? That was what we gave
it. We're about to find out.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to go into the May Night Machine room to find out what the real oracle, the May Night AI, the machine, what we're gonna do, Fred?
We're gonna twiddle some knobs, we're gonna press some buttons.
Much less adventurous.
Yeah,
well, previously you've come out with some much more interesting things to do with that machine.
It's my go-to, twiddling knobs, pressing buttons, pull some levers.
Okay, now we're talking.
We're gonna punch some digits.
Yeah,
we're gonna break some knuckles,
whack a few moles.
I'm gonna kick a pole with my shin.
Yes, and then that will leave us with the final May Night score. Undisputable, might I add.
Undeniable.
Although subject to change, I think. Okay, cool. So we will see you guys back here in a few moments, unless you're a long form listener.
Oh yeah, and
then you're still in the room. Hello. Back. We prefer you guys, as always.
So I reckon we go. Let's rattle through. Hi guys.
Hey guys.
Let's rattle through with the scores that you have from last time.
We'll give them a little summary,
and we'll just say if there's any that we feel a bit differently about.
Okay, so starting off with a plot of 6 out of 10.
So 6 is mixed.
Yeah, and.
You know what?
After that discussion,
maybe 5. Wait, so plot is one of the.
It had a clear direction where it was like, this is what we're trying to do in terms of the achievement.
Where else would we kind of knock a few points for being a bit muddled and not having the clearest direction or message if it's not plot?
So I'm going to give you our 6s on plot. That usually actually helps quite a lot.
Because I'm feeling a 5 here. I'm feeling maybe a drop down.
I think it could be, it's a 6 out of 10 for plot in the Midnight Machine. To America, 2001 Space Odyssey, Crouching Tiger, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, In Time, and The Critic.
Some garbage ones in there as well, aren't there? Now, you know what? I'm sometimes I feel like we need to just take it at face value of what we've said, and okay. I'm feeling a 5.
Okay, character 8. Yep, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, go on.
Yep. Dialogue 8. Because of the quotability of some of the moments, Morgan Freeman.
I'm happy with dialogue 8.
And there was the poem, which counts as dialogue. Performance 8.
Yeah.
Matt Damon and Morgan Freeman pretty much are just the full performances.
Yeah, I was trying to knock it down before, but I definitely think Morgan Freeman does a very good job.
Matt Damon certainly does as well. Visuals 7.
Why, oh why?
6 is below neutral. 6 is negative. Really. 6.5 is absolute neutrality.
6 is mixed, though, of course. So,
yeah, so that's inconsistent. No.
Let's say 7. I don't have any reason to really.
Yeah, I don't feel strongly about it. Sound 4.
Yeah, apart from if we'd go lower.
The absolute insult of a single song, but it wasn't.
There were 4 isn't just the single song. I think the song choices, they felt so like weirdly new wave.
Yeah.
2000s pop punk vibe. It was odd.
Just terribly of the time. Which I guess is like...
It was kind of... I don't even know if it was of the time. It felt so out of place. Like, yes, It came out in the 2000s, but it felt like really early, weird 2000s.
It felt
grungy.
Terribly corny. It did not feel good.
Go on, keep it as a 4. Yeah, it was definitely on the lower end of the 10s, wasn't it?
Impact.
What did we put?
6. Seems... Yeah. How many reviews did it get?
Go on, give it 6.
Give us a guess. How many reviews did it get? Bear in mind, Scott Pilgrim got 470,000.
Oh, I reckon less than Scott Pilgrim. I'm going to go... All right, I'll plump a number. So Iron Giant was 230. 470. I'm going to go 260.
169.
Wow, I'm rubbish at that game.
6 out... Well, that's quite hard. 6 out of 10 then for Impact. Is that fair? How did it do in the box office?
I think it was a modest success.
Because Iron Giant didn't just get a few reviews, it got a few reviews and an absolute tank in the performances box office wise. Yeah. Whereas at least it seems to have done okay in them.
Done alright.
6 seems alright. 6 is mixed. 6 is fine.
Okay, go on. 6 it.
Okay, bring us back in the room when you're ready, Freddie.
We're back. Whoa, that was
that. Yeah, right. Okay, we're back. Yeah. Back in the room. Back in the room, ladies and gentlemen.
What a journey. We've been through time and space, and all we have seen is numbers and figures.
That Midnight Machine is really something, man.
The Matrix, we're just in lines and digits.
And it exists and doesn't exist whilst we're not in the room.
And there's like some overweight, hairless man in a corner going,
yes.
Whoa!
Yes. I must have missed him. But I take it. That's true.
I can't see.
Okay, so we have got a number to rate this film out of 10 once and for all. Invictus, 2009, starring Morgan Freeman and Matt Damon. It has been given 6.87 out of 10. Making it the 27th greatest film of all time.
Until further notice.
But for reference, since we've only managed to do about 40, that puts it just below the fifth, bottom third. About bottom third.
Yeah.
Top of the bottom third. If that makes any sense whatsoever. If you're interested, which you probably aren't because I've already told you this in the last episode, but that actually gave it the exact same score. Can you remember what the film was?
Well, didn't we change one of the scores on here? Did we change 2 scores? Did one go up, one go down?
Could have been. What do you mean changing scores? Well, do you mean twiddled some different levers?
Did we reconfigure the aspect ratio and the hyperdrive on this one?
Nice.
Oh god, yeah. What was it? No, it's not coming back to me. I'll just
take
dead air.
Where's balls Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, baby. I'm
Yeah.
kind of happy with that. Both very kind of Hollywoody for me a little bit.
I like that.
I liked him.
Of course
6.87.
we like it.
Do you have to watch it? No.
Nah.
Should you watch it? No. Can you watch it? Yeah.
You can. If it's below 6, you can't watch it.
Permission from Matt Knight.
From Matt Damon Knight. I you know what? It was a way to spend 2 hours, and it could have been worse. Could have been better.
Yes.
You know, we both took something from it, which is that Nelson Mandela's a pretty cool guy.
Top bloke. Right. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. We really genuinely appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Cheers. Jumbo, as many people know, during his 27 years on Robben Island, Nelson Mandela found solace and inspiration in the poem Invictus by William Ernest Henley. A poem about the ability to remain hopeful and strong in the face of adversity. This week at Mate Night, we reviewed Clint Eastwood's film about Nelson Mandela's life during the early days of his presidency, which is appropriately titled Invictus, after the poem I just mentioned.
Oh!
Nice. In the film, Mandela works with the captain of the South African rugby team, Francois Pienaar, played by Matt Damon, with the goal of using the Rugby World Cup as a way to help unite a divided nation.
Okay.
There's your context. What many people don't know, Jumbo, is that there was another piece of literature that inspired Nelson Mandela during his stint on Robben Island.
I'm not sure I believe you.
And Clint Eastwood very nearly used this as the key inspiration for his film before ultimately going with Invictus. Had you heard about this?
I feel like you're having me on and you're about to read Harry Potter.
Very little, not very well known this.
Okay, top tier research.
Yeah, and
you heard it here first.
In fact,
at Matt Night,
Eastwood went as far as to shoot different versions of the scenes we saw in Invictus, using this alternative source of inspiration as the backdrop.
Are we going to get a poem read from Fred?
Now, Jambo, I've done some digging.
Oh my goodness.
And reached out to the Eastwood estate. And guess what, Jambo? I've managed to procure a Mate Night exclusive. I have the audio cut of one of these alternative